she froze in place. On the other side of the glass, just inches away, two small brown eyes blinked back at her. The bear cub wasn't snarling. It wasn't breaking in. It was simply peeking. The snow fell in sheets, heavy enough to swallow sound. The woman crouched against a half-fallen tree, arms wrapped tight around her ribs, the last of her strength already spent. Her pack lay open at her side, nearly empty. One object remained inside, a crumpled piece of bread. Her throat ached with hunger. She had been rationing for days, cutting away smaller and smaller pieces each night, praying the storm would break before she starved. But now, she knew this was it. One bite, one swallow, and she'd have nothing left. Her trembling fingers reached for it, and then she heard it. A crunch in the snow. She froze. Her pulse slammed against her ribs. Slowly, she lifted her head. There it was. The bear. It was massive, its fur thick with frost, its dark body moving slow but sure through the drifts. Its breath hung in clouds, ears twitching, nose lifted to the air. For a moment, she thought her starved brain was inventing things, some final hallucination. But then the ground shook as it came closer, and there was no mistaking the weight of it. Her stomach twisted with terror. She should have run, should have hidden, but there was nowhere to go. The bear stopped only a few feet away. Snowflakes clung to its fur, sparkling in the dim light. Its head lowered, eyes fixed on her, then on the bread clutched in her hand. Her chest heaved. She pressed back against the tree, shaking. This is it. This is how I die. But something inside her, a strange, desperate instinct, moved her hand instead of hiding it. Slowly, she stretched out her arm. The bread trembled in her palm. The bear's nostrils flared. It stepped closer. Every breath she took felt like glass in her lungs. Her eyes burned, her throat caught. All she could hear was the crunch of its paws in the snow. And then it was there. Its great head hovered over her hand. For a terrible second, she thought it would lunge. But instead, it bent lower, lips brushing her palm as it plucked the bread away. Her heart nearly burst out of her chest. The bear chewed, slow and deliberate, eyes still locked on hers. Then it lifted its head, the faintest huff of breath escaping its nostrils. Her hand dropped. She was shaking so violently she thought she might collapse. The bear turned. And in the silence of the storm, it walked away. She stared after it, chest rising and falling in sharp gasps, unsure if she had just saved herself or sealed her death. Because now she had nothing left. And the bear had everything. The woman has given away her last food, and now the bear is gone, leaving her with nothing. David's heartbeat pounded in his ears as the forest seemed to close in around him. The mist hung heavier now, settling on wet leaves and twisted branches, each droplet catching the faint, filtered light like tiny, trembling prisms. The bear remained immovable, standing solidly on the trail, muscles coiled, eyes unwavering. David could feel the sheer weight of its presence pressing down on him, a primal force, indifferent to human expectations, yet intensely aware of every step, every movement. He took another cautious step backward, trying to maintain space without turning his back. The cub shuffled further behind its parent, small paws slipping on moss-covered rocks. David felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. The bear wasn't advancing, but neither was it retreating. The realization sank into him that his every action had to be precise, deliberate, and calm. Nature had its rules, and he was merely a participant in a game governed by instincts far older and more honed than his own. He spoke again, voice low, almost trembling. "I'm leaving. I won't hurt you or the cub." His words were met with silence, only the faint rush of the river and the occasional drip of water from leaves. The bear's eyes remained fixed on him, head slightly tilted, nostrils flaring as it assessed him. David felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had prepared for bears in theory, but now that he faced one directly, the theory melted into raw, palpable fear. A sudden movement in the undergrowth to his left made him freeze. A branch snapped under the weight of some unseen animal, and both his and the bear's attention shifted instantly. The cub whined softly, flattening its ears. David realized with a jolt that he was not the only living presence being evaluated by the bear. Its instincts were tuned to protect, to anticipate, to react. One wrong move, one sudden sound, and the delicate balance could shatter in an instant. David's mind raced. He could see the contours of the bear's body, the immense shoulders, thick neck, massive paws pressed into the damp earth. It was perfectly still, yet every muscle seemed ready to spring into motion. The cub pressed closer, tiny claws gripping the moss and debris beneath it, while the bear's massive paw hovered protectively over the small body. It was a standoff, yes, but more than that, it was a display of intelligence, patience, and primal calculation. David knew he had to retreat slowly, giving the bear room while keeping the cub in his peripheral vision. He shifted his weight cautiously, each movement deliberate, heart hammering. He took a deep breath and whispered again, "I'm going. I promise. I'm leaving." The bear's ears twitched, her breath fogged the air as she stared at the shape lying in the snow. Her hands shook, both from the cold and the gnawing in her stomach, as she crouched down, brushing away the powder that clung to it. It was a carcass. Small, a hare, stiff and frozen, but fresh. Its fur still thick, its body intact. Her throat tightened, eyes stinging. Food. Real food. She glanced up at the bear, heart hammering. It stood a few feet away, watching her with dark, steady eyes. Its chest rose and fell, clouds of vapor curling into the storm. It didn't move toward the rabbit. It didn't lunge, or try to reclaim it. It had brought it to her. Her lips parted, but no words came. She didn't know if it was possible, if bears could understand need, or hunger, or mercy. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe she was only imagining some bond because her mind was fraying with starvation. But the hare was there. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, the cold biting through her skin. She had no fire, no way to cook it properly, but right now, raw survival outweighed everything else. Still, she hesitated. Her eyes lifted again. The bear was still watching. Its head tilted slightly, snow clinging to its muzzle. "Why?" she whispered, voice breaking. The bear gave no answer. Just a slow blink. Her stomach twisted violently, tearing away the last of her hesitation. She sank down against the tree again, knife fumbling in her hand as she prepared the carcass with shaking fingers. The first bite made her gag. It was cold, metallic, bitter on her tongue. But once she swallowed, something inside her snapped, the desperate, animal instinct to survive taking over. She ate until her body wouldn't let her anymore, until warmth spread through her chest, faint but real. When it was done, she leaned back, wiping her mouth with her sleeve, heart still pounding. The bear hadn't moved. Her breath caught. Was it waiting for something? Was it only feeding her so it could keep her alive for later? The thought sent a shiver colder than the wind racing down her spine. But then the bear huffed, turning away. It lumbered a few steps into the storm and stopped. Its massive head swung back toward her, as if checking to see if she followed. Her pulse hammered. It wanted her to move. The wind howled like a living thing, lashing her cheeks with shards of ice. Every step felt like wading through a sea of white. She pulled her coat tighter around her body, a useless gesture, the cold already buried in her bones. And yet, she followed. The bear's hulking figure moved steadily ahead, massive paws pressing deep tracks into the snow. Tracks she used like a lifeline, planting her boots inside them, forcing her legs to keep going. Every so often, the bear turned its head, eyes glinting through the storm. Not once did it growl or charge. Not once did it vanish into the trees. Always, it stayed just ahead, as though tethering her to the present, to motion, to survival. Her thoughts whirled as fiercely as the wind. Why hadn't it killed her when she gave it the bread? Why bring her the hare? Why guide her now? It made no sense. She staggered, knees buckling, and for a moment she fell to her hands in the snow, gasping. The cold bit into her palms, the sting nearly unbearable. She half expected the bear to turn then, to strike, to finish her off. Instead, it stopped. It stood a few yards ahead, waiting, its massive body steady against the gale. It didn't move until she forced herself back onto her feet. Her chest heaved. You won't leave me, will you?" The words disappeared into the storm, unheard. But saying them out loud gave her a strange strength, thin as a thread but just enough to keep her moving. The forest thickened as they pushed deeper, trees leaning close, their branches sagging heavy with snow. The storm screamed through them, tearing loose flakes and needles, showering the ground in white. Hours blurred into a cruel rhythm, follow the tracks, stumble, rise again. Always, the bear was there, carving the path, never closer than a few feet, never farther than she could see. And then? The trees parted. Her breath caught in her throat as the land dipped ahead, a hollow in the forest floor. And within it, half hidden by snow and branches, rose a dark shape. A cave. The bear trudged down into the hollow without hesitation, its body disappearing into the shadows inside. She froze at the ridge. Her chest burned with terror. If she followed, there would be no escape. It could be a shelter or a trap. Her legs trembled, every instinct screaming at her to run. But there was nowhere else. Nowhere but the storm. And the storm would kill her faster than the bear ever could. She swallowed, heart hammering, eyes fixed on the black mouth of the cave. Her next step would decide everything. The clearing exploded into chaos. The first wolf scrambled back, its yelp echoing as it limped into the storm. But the others didn't scatter. They surged forward together, dark shapes breaking from the tree-lean, teeth glinting white against the night. The man's chest seized with terror. He clawed weakly at the snow, his body screaming at him to move, to do something, but he was too weak, too broken. All he could do was watch. The bear met them head-on. Its roar shook the forest, rattling through the storm like thunder. Snow flew in sheets as it swung a massive paw, catching one wolf mid-leap and slamming it into the ground with a sickening thud. Another darted in from the side, snapping at its flank, but the bear twisted, jaws flashing, and clamped down on the attacker's shoulder. The wolf howled, writhing before tearing free, blood painting the snow. The man's breath came in short, panicked bursts. His mind screamed at him to look away, but he couldn't. The violence was brutal, raw, terrifying, yet something inside him stirred. Awe. Gratitude. Even hope. But the wolves weren't giving up. They circled, their movements coordinated, patient, clever. One darted close, snapping at the bear's legs. Another lunged from behind, teeth grazing its thick fur. The bear bellowed in rage, spinning, striking, but the pack was relentless. The man realized with a sinking dread the wolves weren't only testing the bear. They were hurting, drawing it away. And if they succeeded, if they pulled the bear from his side, he wouldn't last minutes alone. His pulse hammered in his ears. He tried to shout, but his voice cracked, swallowed by the storm. He tried to move, dragging himself an inch across the snow, his limbs like stone. "Don't leave me, don't leave me." The bear seemed to hear him. Even as it fought, it kept circling back, never straying too far from where the man lay. Each time a wolf lunged closer to him, the bear wheeled, snarling, driving it back with sweeping claws. It was fighting two battles, survival and protection. The man's throat tightened. The fear didn't vanish, but something heavier replaced it. The realization that this wild creature, this beast of the forest, was choosing again and again to stand between him and death. But the wolves weren't finished. A new howl rose from the trees, deeper, louder, commanding. The pack leader. The man's blood froze as he saw it, larger, darker, eyes burning hotter than the rest. It padded into the clearing, teeth bared, growl rumbling low. The other wolves fell back slightly, as if making room. The leader lowered its head, and the storm seemed to pause. Then it charged. The alpha wolf has entered the fight, and the storm is about to decide who survives the night. The air in the cave felt colder when she opened her eyes. Her neck ached from sleeping against stone, her body stiff and trembling. At first, she thought it was just the storm that woke her, the wind still howling through the forest. But then she saw them. Shadows moving at the mouth of the cave. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She blinked hard, forcing her vision into focus. Figures loomed in the snow, not the massive bulk of the bear, but leaner, quicker shapes. They moved in packs, slinking low, their eyes catching faint glimmers of light. Wolves. Her blood ran cold. She pressed back into the wall, holding her breath. There were 3, no, 4, circling just beyond the entrance. Their paws crunched softly in the snow, ears pricked forward, noses twitching. They smelled her. Her throat closed as one padded closer, slipping into the shadow of the cave. Its lips curled, teeth flashing white in the dim light. A low growl rumbled from its chest, echoing against the stone. Panic clawed up her throat. She reached instinctively for her knife, fingers trembling so violently she almost dropped it. But a single knife against 4 wolves? Hopeless. The growl deepened. Another wolf slipped in behind the first, hackles bristling, eyes locked on her. The others paced outside, tails flicking, waiting. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. The walls felt like they were closing in, the storm outside sealing her fate. And then? A sound shook the cave. A roar. It erupted from the shadows deeper inside, so deep and powerful the stone itself seemed to vibrate. The wolves froze. The sound came again, deafening, primal, the kind of sound that lived in their blood and told them to run. The woman's chest seized as a massive shape surged forward from the darkness. The bear. Its bulk filled the cave, fur bristling, teeth bared. It charged with a fury that sent the first wolf yelping backward, tail tucked. The others scattered, snapping once before vanishing into the snow, their howls fading into the storm. Silence slammed back down. The woman pressed against the wall, knife still clutched in her shaking hand, eyes wide. The bear turned, chest heaving, breath rolling in clouds. Its eyes flicked to her, steady, piercing, before it lowered its head in a huff, almost dismissive, and settled back toward the center of the cave. Her body wouldn't move. She sat frozen, caught between terror and awe. It hadn't killed her. It had defended her. The wolves are driven off, but the woman realizes the bear is not just sparing her, it is protecting her. The cave was silent again, save for the storm pressing at its mouth. Her knife still trembled in her grip, but her hand felt useless now. What defense could she offer compared to what she had just witnessed? The wolves hadn't left because of her. They had left because of the bear. She couldn't tear her eyes away from him as he lumbered deeper into the cave, his hulking body blending into the shadows. He didn't look back, didn't lunge at her, didn't even seem interested in what she was doing. He simply dropped onto his side with a thunderous weight, exhaling a deep, guttural huff that shook loose dust from the cave walls. Her whole body sagged, adrenaline leaking out of her in waves. She lowered the knife, her arm heavy, and slumped against the stone. Her mind replayed what had just happened. The flash of teeth, the wolves circling, her own useless fear, and then him. Charging forward like some force of nature. A bear, a wild predator, choosing to fight them instead of her. Her lips trembled as she whispered, barely audible above the storm, "Why?" The bear stirred at the sound of her voice, but didn't rise. His dark eyes glinted faintly in the firelight as he watched her. Not threatening. Not friendly. Simply aware. She wrapped her arms around her knees, pulling them tight to her chest. Hunger gnawed at her again, sharper now that the fear had dulled. Her stomach growled loudly, betraying her. The bear shifted, his head lifting slightly. His ears twitched, nostrils flaring. Then, to her astonishment, he rose to his feet. Her body tensed, every instinct screaming at her to back away. But instead of approaching, the bear padded to the cave mouth. Snow swirled around his massive frame as he slipped outside, vanishing into the storm. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Her chest tightened. Was he leaving for good? Was she truly alone again? She didn't know how long she sat there, shivering in the dim firelight, staring at the dark opening of the cave. The storm howled relentlessly, its icy fingers creeping inside. Her eyelids grew heavy with exhaustion. Then, movement. The bear returned. Her eyes widened. Snow clung to his fur, his paws dragging faint trails behind him. And in his jaws, something unexpected dangled. Branches. Small, broken limbs snapped from the forest floor. He dropped them by the fire pit with a grunt. The woman gasped. Not food. But firewood. Her hands shook as she reached for the branches, feeding them into the weak flames. The fire leapt higher, throwing warmth against her frozen skin. She turned back toward the bear, words caught in her throat. You brought this?" The bear had already curled back into the shadows, his eyes closing as though the matter was settled. She stared, her heart hammering for reasons she couldn't explain. First food. Now this. He wasn't just sparing her. He was helping her. The bear doesn't just protect her, it brings her what she needs to survive. The bear's paws landed heavily on the cobblestones, each step deliberate, dragging the weight of silence with him. His head lowered slightly, his breath pushing white puffs into the cold night air. The apples lay forgotten behind him, scattered in broken crates, juice soaking into the dirt. But his eyes weren't on the fruit anymore. They were fixed on the small hand pressed against the glass. The boy's breath fogged the window as he leaned forward, his eyes wide but unblinking. His palm stayed where it was, trembling only slightly. The librarian reached to pull him back, but her grip hesitated. Something in the child's stillness, in the way he held himself, froze her arm. The bear approached slowly, his massive frame illuminated now and again by the shifting glow of a lantern outside. His fur rippled in the half-light, coarse strands catching the silver of the moon. His steps echoed against the walls, a deep rhythm that made the villagers' hearts pound in unison. "He's coming closer," the farmer hissed, clutching the lantern so tightly that the iron handle burned into his skin. "We need to act." "No sudden moves," the librarian whispered sharply, her eyes locked on the bear. "If we frighten him now," she didn't finish. The bear reached the base of the library wall. His claws scraped faintly against the stone as he shifted his weight, tilting his head. His nose brushed the glass where the boy's palm rested. The sound was shockingly soft, a faint tap, followed by the fog of his breath blooming across the pane. The boy's chest rose quickly, but he didn't move. He whispered, barely audible, "He's not angry." The librarian's pulse thundered in her ears. She couldn't decide if it was madness or instinct that kept the boy frozen there. But the bear didn't growl. He didn't slam his weight into the wall. Instead, he pressed his muzzle gently against the window, as though testing the barrier between them. From outside, the villagers shifted nervously. One of the older men raised a pitchfork, but the farmer snapped at him in a low growl. "Put it down." "No." The air was too thin, too fragile for steel. Inside, the boy slowly lifted his other hand, placing both palms against the glass. The bear's breath misted the pane, each exhale deep and steady, each inhale pulling the boy's scent into his searching nose. For a long, unbearable moment, nothing moved but the drifting steam between them. Then the bear made a sound. Not a growl, not a roar, but a low, rumbling huff, almost like a sigh. His ears flicked back, and he shifted his weight again, pressing closer to the glass. The pane creaked faintly under the heat and moisture of his breath. The librarian finally found her voice. "Step back," she urged the boy, though even as she said it, her tone lacked conviction. Something in her chest told her this was no act of aggression. This was something else entirely, something she couldn't explain. The boy shook his head slightly, his eyes never leaving the bear's. "He's just looking." But the moment's quiet shattered with the sudden squeak of a loose cartwheel. Someone in the square had shifted nervously, pushing their cart too close against the stones. The sound rang sharp in the silence. The bear's head snapped toward it. His ears shot forward, body tensing like a coiled spring. His muscles rippled as his claws dug into the stone at the light. David's muscles tensed as the sudden splash from upstream reverberated through the forest, echoing off the mossy trunks and river rocks. The bear's ears swiveled sharply, nostrils flaring as it assessed the source. The cub pressed instinctively closer to its parent, claws digging into the damp soil. David froze, his heart pounding, aware that the tension he had felt for hours was now peaking. Every fiber of his being screamed for caution. One misstep could unravel the delicate balance that had been painstakingly maintained. Through the swirling mist, he glimpsed a disturbance in the water, a large salmon caught in the river's rapid current, struggling against the force of the swollen river. The bear's stance shifted instantly, muscles coiled, massive shoulders rippling under thick fur, eyes locked on the prey. The cub squeaked softly, mirroring the parent's focus and awareness. David realized he was witnessing a crucial life-and-death moment, the culmination of hours of observation, patience, and instinct. He inched backward slowly, careful to maintain his footing on the slippery moss-covered incline. The bear's gaze flicked briefly toward him, amber eyes assessing, but it quickly returned to the river. Its paws pressed firmly into the wet soil, leaving deep impressions, each movement deliberate, precise. The cub mirrored the parent, small paws gripping moss and roots, muscles tensed in anticipation. David's pulse quickened as he watched the adult bear prepare to act, understanding that this was a moment of raw, unfiltered natural behavior. The salmon thrashed violently, water splashing across the bear's paws. The adult remained poised, balancing instinct with calculation. It leaned forward slightly, a massive paw reaching out, but not recklessly, not with aggression, merely to corral the fish toward calmer water. The cub watched intently, amber eyes wide, learning from the adult's measured response. David's breath caught. He was witnessing intelligence, patience, and precision, a rare glimpse into the mind of a wild predator acting with awareness and restraint. The river churned, currents swirling around rocks and submerged logs. David's focus sharpened as he tracked the bear's every movement. The adult nudged the salmon gently, redirecting its path toward a slower eddy where the cub could observe without danger. The cub squeaked, ears flicked forward, and claws gripped the soil tightly. David exhaled slowly, heart pounding. The bear's actions were deliberate, grounded in natural instinct, yet exhibiting a level of intelligence and problem-solving that transcended mere predation. He shifted slightly, careful not to startle the pair. Mist curled around. The forest stretched endlessly around her, a vast world of white silence broken only by the crunch of her boots and the heavy prints of the bear leading her forward. For hours, she followed. The cold bit at her skin, but the fire inside her was different now. She wasn't stumbling blindly anymore. She wasn't waiting for death in a frozen cave. She was moving because of him. At times, she faltered, her legs weak from exhaustion. Each time, the bear paused, waiting until she found the strength to continue. His slow, steady pace seemed made for her, not for the wilderness that he owned. Then, just when she thought she couldn't take another step, the trees opened. Her breath caught. Smoke. Thin trails rose in the distance, curling into the pale sky. And beneath them, shapes. Cabins. A settlement. Her knees nearly buckled. Home. People. Safety. The bear stopped at the tree line. His massive body was framed against the snow, his head turning slightly as if to watch her reaction. She choked on a sob, tears stinging her frozen skin. She turned to him, words tumbling, broken but desperate. You brought me back." He stood still, silent, his breath clouding in the cold. For a heartbeat, she thought he might move closer, might let her reach out, to touch the creature who had spared her, defended her, fed her, and now delivered her to life. But instead, he turned. Without a sound, he padded back into the trees, his massive form swallowed by the forest, leaving only deep prints in the snow behind. Her heart wrenched. She wanted to call out, to stop him, to thank him, but her voice broke into the wind. She stood there, staring after him until the last flicker of his shadow vanished into the wilderness. Then she turned toward the cabins. Toward life. The villagers rushed to meet her when they saw her staggering from the trees, their hands pulling her close, wrapping her in warmth, voices tumbling over one another with shock and relief. But even as she let herself collapse into their arms, part of her remained with the bear. The wild, impossible companion who had asked nothing, yet given her everything. Later, as she sat by a roaring fire inside the safety of the cabin, a steaming bowl of broth in her hands, her mind returned to him. His eyes in the firelight. His roar that scattered wolves. His silent gift of a hare. And above all, the simple truth. She had given him her last food, expecting death. And in return, he had given her life. She looked out the frosted window into the endless white of the forest beyond, and whispered softly, almost like a prayer, "Thank you." She gave up her last piece of food to a starving bear, and in return, he gave her survival. Sometimes, the most unexpected bonds are the ones that save us. What would you have done if you were in her place? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more true survival stories like this one.